Hi everybody, step into my office. You're back here at Starlight Astrology. That's my cat. And today we're going to be talking about Chiron conjunct the Sun in your natal chart. So first of all, Chiron is a comet. It's represented by a key, and it's called like the wounded healer. Wherever it is in your chart, you're going to have a lot of pain in your life. It's going to be kind of like a recurring source of pain that may never completely go away. But because of that, you can develop a sort of wisdom around it and a resilience. And you may end up kind of, as life goes on, become sort of an expert and a healer in that particular aspect of your birth chart. So when you have Chiron conjuncting your sun sign, the sun sign being your ego, your identity, and it can represent like your father relationship, you're going to have a particular wounding in those areas of your life. So with Chiron conjunct the sun, it can be a placement that indicates a low self-esteem, especially early in life. It can be kind of like hard to go out into the world and just represent yourself as you are. Almost like when people look at you, you might feel extra shame, like presenting yourself, presenting your passions, talking about what you believe or what you feel. All of these things are going to be a little bit suppressed because they're associated with a source of pain. So it's a really difficult placement. Of course, it'll depend on where your sun is, like what sign and what house. But all in all, it's usually the placement of someone who's going on to become a healer if they choose to take the path of kind of like alchemizing this pain on a daily basis and transforming it into the healing potential that you really have. I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I know a ton of people that have this placement in my own life, which is pretty crazy. And so there's like different ways that it can manifest. One way that it can manifest is like being really awkward because like when a person goes to speak or they go to say hello to someone, they kind of like hesitate and are like, oh, it's like, oh, don't look at me. So people can be really awkward who have this, but the reverse is that I've noticed a lot of people have this sign, like Pharrell has this sign, and a good friend of mine who's like a skateboarder has this sign, and they both kind of have like a swagger to them, although Pharrell can be kind of awkward as well sometimes. But I think that there is kind of this mechanism of like very much protecting your ego and kind of like needing to have just a very hard outside. If you're not really willing to accept and embrace Chiron for what it is, which is incredibly vulnerable, then you're going to do the reverse and like kind of have this aura of like ultimate swagger and like always saying the right thing and like always being very cool. And it can be a very attractive placement, ironically, when people manifest this way, but those are the lower manifestations of Chiron conjunct the sun. It's like, it's indicative that a person isn't really willing to feel their pain. And there's, of course, that saying, like, if you're going to heal it, you got to feel it. So, kind of like, if you have this placement, embracing the fact that you're going to feel a bit awkward in life, which is very uncomfortable. It takes a lot of bravery. But one thing that comes to mind with this placement is the expression. I feel like it's a biblical expression, and I don't remember it word for word, but it's like your greatest vulnerability is your greatest strength. So as we go on in life and we begin to alchemize this placement, you end up developing kind of like this capacity for pain that is immense because it is such a painful placement that you can kind of like develop a sense of compassion that is so great and so beyond like the average person. Kind of creates, it turns you into a healer. You can recognize how little things in life can be embarrassing and difficult and hard and painful for others in this way that some people may not recognize. For folks who have kind of like an easier psyche and like they don't have a hard time asserting themselves and things like that, and just the average, when you understand how difficult it can be just to exist, you end up developing like a completely a true strength, a strength that comes from resilience and a strength that comes from persistence, although it is definitely hard earned. So let's see. Okay, so especially because the ego is, and the sun sign is associated with father relationships, we can definitely see some experiences of abusive relationships with this placement, although that's not always the case. But I know like Mariah Carey has sun conjunct Chiron, and she had like an incredibly traumatic upbringing, and then she went on to marry into an abusive relationship in her earlier life, and then eventually she kind of like learned her worth and learned her boundaries and learned how to deal with the pain of her life and transmit it into a healing way. And like one thing I noticed about her is that her music is very kind of like gospel-esque. It's very like, she has a healing element to the art that she makes. It's very beautiful and it's very raw. But yeah, you can kind of almost attract people who are looking to manipulate you, because you have this sense of both like everything about you is vulnerable. You put yourself in the world and you feel vulnerable, and that can attract people who are looking for an easy target to manipulate. So you really need to watch out for that. And you need to remember that vulnerability is your strength, and to have boundaries around that and offer yourself to people to the extent that you know you're willing to share with them, instead of kind of like over-sacrificing and self-effacing and just almost like becoming very codependent with people. That's pretty normal with this sign, because the high manifestation of Chiron conjunct the sun is that you're a healer, so you already have inclination to extend compassion. That's one of your greatest strengths, is wanting to care for people, wanting to relate with people who come from a lot of pain. But you just need to watch out, because if someone isn't completely healed, they may use some of your gifts against you, and that's something to be cautious about. You're very highly sensitive to other people's needs. It is truly an incredible gift, and it's extremely needed in the world. And that's why I feel like it's just important not to give it to the wrong people, and getting in tune with your body. Not everyone says this in astrology, but I believe that the ego is very much a mental, it's just your ego kind of exists in your mind. So another way we can look at Chiron conjunct the sun is that you're going to have kind of like a wounded psyche. And that's no joke. That's one of the most painful kinds of wounds that you can have, is a wound in your mind. It can be hard to have personal relationships with people, like really deep, intimate relationships, because there are so many triggers inside of you that you feel like you need to protect. You feel like you're so vulnerable. Sharing yourself intimately and vulnerably with others can kind of cause like a reaction, like a fight or flight. So kind of like learning that balance of having healthy relationships can be pretty difficult, and you might just have a lot of triggers that need to be healed. You might get in relationships where people call you crazy, and then you start to believe that you're crazy. So it's very important, I think, in this placement to take some alone time and to work extra hard at loving yourself and dictating for your own self who you are. Don't let other people tell you who you are, because you have that sort of burdened sense of ego where you might accept what other people say about you pretty readily. And so working to almost, I would recommend like developing some kind of ritual or routine or just something to every day ground you and remind yourself who you say you are with those affirmations. There's a lot of different practices like that that will be very helpful and healing for these people, like looking in the mirror with affirmations for 5 minutes or something like that. Yeah, so let's see here. Okay, again, with this placement being one that is painful, and it is painful in the mind, but there can also be sort of like, I'm going to say like a need to escape, because your life is pretty tumultuous when you've got a massive source of pain right on your ego. So a lot of people can kind of like, we can see in the low manifestations it going towards addictions. And that's another thing to look out for, is taking care of your body. I see some people with Chiron conjunct the sun who have a really difficult time with self-care, of just like the everyday feeding yourself something healthy, not going straight for the beer before you've eaten dinner, you know, things like that. These people can kind of have a difficult time setting like healthy routines for themselves. It's not a placement for the weak, but I think that as you begin to live life, I really want to encourage anyone who has this placement, because it's as you alchemize these painful experiences in your early years, you end up developing a very supreme sense of wisdom. You have the ability to see yourself in other people who are suffering, which most of like the spiritual teachers, that's what they're trying to encourage folks to learn how to do, is like have compassion for the person in front of you. And that's what Chiron conjunct the sun is very natural at. Whether you choose to embrace the task or not is up to you. But I think that like learning to accept your path, that it's not going to be as easy as other people's, and you might feel more awkward than other people, or you might have difficult relationship experiences, or you just may feel the need to escape all the time. As you go through life every day and you choose yourself again and again and again, and you say, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be me, and in spite of this pain, I'm going to shine as I am, you begin the process of alchemizing this pain into some of the most potent healing power that exists. Truly, I believe that. I think these people would be above and beyond as psychologists, astrologers, and like if you have other placements in your chart that kind of like indicate it in the more physical realm, you're going to see healers who do massage therapy and energy work. But this is a healer position, and I have so much love for these people. I've encountered so many of them in my life, and like, although some of them might be kind of difficult to get to know in like a group setting, they're some of the most profound and incredible friends if you choose to seek them out like in a one-on-one setting. So don't sleep on yourselves if you have this placement. I know that it can be easy to compare yourself to other people, but the task that you have is very much internal, and healing your sense of who you are is going to offer a gift to the world that is really unparalleled. And I hope that this video finds you well, and I hope that you choose to shine today, and not to escape, but to confront and alchemize what is before you. Best wishes. Have a good one.